may just have some questions that aren't related to this is the nuts and bolts presentation of the things that are required. And I know you'll have a lot of, other kinds of questions. So there's no way we'll really thoroughly get through all of this content.
Not be getting sound.
So we're going to just start right now with the field coordinators that are on. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, and then so you know who your field coordinator will be. So I see we have Lisa and Caitlin and Paris from the field team so far. So Lisa, you want to, so I'm Julie Navarre. I'm the director of the field program. I'm really happy to have you in these exciting times. Lisa, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Good afternoon and welcome everyone. It's so exciting to see so many familiar faces. I'm Lisa Fuller and I'm the Assistant Director of Field Education. I am also the East Lansing Program MSW Field Coordinator, and that includes our first placement students as well as students in the second year of the regular program who are in the clinical area of specialization.
Thank you. Caitlin?
Hi, I'm Caitlin Rogel-Jones. I'm a field coordinator with the weekend program and the statewide blended program, as well as the macro OCL students.
And Paris?
Hello, I'm Paris. I'm the office coordinator for the field education office. I'm brand spanking new. This is literally my second week. But yeah, so welcome and thank you everybody for sending me your emails and all that.
So would like to record this session so we can pass it on to folks that aren't able to be with us today. If you have an objection for that, you could put it in the chat and we won't do that, or it'll, so if you do, please hope that's okay. So I'll start that recording. Well, it says it's recording.
I've already got it started.
I don't know if you guys were doing introductions.
Paris,
I'm Raymond Watson.
We're not going to do introductions because we have about over 60 people on the call, so there just won't be time to do that. But thanks for asking the question. Okay, so could you give me a thumbs up if you are a brand new, never done been a field instructor before? Okay, looks like most of you have. So another thing just to announce is that I sometimes have unstable internet. So if I will have to take my stop video, and then it won't be an issue with breaking up. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to share my screen with the presentation. I think I'm going to share it. I had it. Okay, try again.
There you go.
Okay, it's not the one that I want you to see. All right, well, I don't know why it's showing this, but it is.
You
Okay,
might
here
try
we
the
go.
display settings in the toolbar at the top.
Oh, there it is. I did that before. Thank you. Team. Okay. So the purpose of this is to help you all understand your roles and responsibilities, and then we'll go through orientation and the stages of the internship experience, integrating just not only theory, but all of the content into practice. And then we'll talk about, paperwork and responding to issues. So this is, the purpose is to really identify professional identity and self-reflection and use of self. And for our program, field education is 28% of the graduate degree requirements. Students will sometimes say, I'm a clinical student, I'm a organizational and community leadership student at the MSW level. The first year, if you have a MSW student in their first field placement, that's what we call generalist. And if it's a bachelor student, it's also generalist. It's the exact same curriculum that CSWE requires that we teach. Then and at the advanced concentration placement, then the students are either in a clinical or macro experience. Okay. So for our bachelor students, the council requires a bachelor degree. It doesn't have to be in social work, but that's preferred. And it can, for MSW students, the council requires an MSW degree with 2 years postmaster's experience, and we prefer licensing but don't require it. When we don't require it because we have a liaison model where everybody is licensed, and that is what meets our compliance with the public health code. So when we're looking at field at responsibilities for you, involves a good orientation is always really helpful for them. Helping them develop activities to meet the LET stands for Learning Evaluation Tool. That is our the curriculum that says that students are meeting the competencies through behaviors and activities that you will help them develop. And we have samples of that on our website. We'll provide, your liaison can help you with that too. That's probably the most challenging part for field instructors. We require an hour of weekly supervision, or the Council of Social Work Education requires that. That can be group or it could be, individual. And then for your responsibilities for us is to attend these trainings or at least view them virtually when you can. There's a mid-semester verbal evaluation. It is a verbal evaluation unless there are concerns. And then to consult with the liaison who's an MSU employee that helps monitor your experience and support you and the student. And then if there's any changes in the field placement, either you change, the schedule changes, your organization, we go on lockdown, who knows what's going to happen. If there are concerns about students' attendance or performance, these would be things to let us know. Okay, I see that there's some things in the chat, so I want to stop for a minute. And are there things that we need to address?
There were just a few questions about where to find the copy of the slides, and they're in the website. And I just posted the website link in the chat.
Okay, thank you. That the only one? Okay. This is a tool that you can use for supervision if you want. And for those of you that are, if, you know, we're in need of fully remote placements right now. If any of you have that as a possibility, if you could put that in the chat, that would be great. If you can take more students, we have some students that have either are immunocompromised or live with someone who is, and we need to be able to provide them with experiences around that. So if that's a need, please please let us know. So this is a tool that we also have on our website that if you want, you can use it or something like this. It's just not required, where the student can address, these are the 9 competencies at the top, and the student can identify a way that they're addressing policy, diversity, and difference, advocating for a social justice issue or something. And then you can, this is pretty detailed, but if you can modify it if you want to use it in any kind of way. We also, just so you know, you can take any of our continuing education offerings. They are all online now for $5 a credit hour from now until June 30th of 2021. You can also fill out a form to become a clinical faculty. You don't have to do anything for the CEs. You're already in. All we need is your name and email, and we got that. The appointment piece for clinical faculty requires a form, and these are some of the things that it allows you to have. Some people like having an MSU email because then you can access the library. Oops. So the student is responsible for participating and working with you, being prepared for supervision. They're required to follow your agency's policies and be professional. They're required to adhere to the code of ethics and know it and be able to apply that while they're in the agency with you. Anything that's of safety concern, they need to report that to you. We as a school assign the liaisons to the student and to you. We're here to support and provide consultation. The liaison will review the LET and the activities on that. We are responsible for the final grade. It is a pass, no pass, or pass, no grade system. We got rid of 4.0 scale 2 years ago. So you as a field instructor recommend a grade, and then the ultimate assignment of the grade is that of the school or myself or Nikki Moody. We address concerns that arise, and there's an integrated field seminar that all students have to be in as well. The site visit will not be in person. Nothing is going to be in person this year, at least for the fall semester, unless things change. And what I mean by that, I mean, nobody from the school is going to be coming to the agency. They'll all be done virtually. Okay, I'm just going to pause. Are there any other things in the chat you have questions about? Okay. So helping the student get started in terms of orientation, here are some ideas of things that you could do for students to get to know the agency, have them, they're all going to be reading policies and procedure manuals, and just, you know, help them get to know other folks that are there. So they really should become familiar with your programs and the services that you all provide. You know, so safety, we have a big pandemic going on right now that is can be a huge safety issue. I just talked with the university physician office today for MSU. They're responsible for all the health of the school. This, just to let you know, students will have to complete a health screening form through the university every time they are physically present at the agency. So, and if they are positive for these symptoms, they may not be allowed to come. So it's not all of them, but you know, they have to have, there's a couple of categories, one out of the top categories, and then at least 2 out of the bottom 5 things that are listed in the other category. You know, and it's all of the things that, you know, fever, chills, achy, sore throat, loss of taste, things like that. So I just wanted you to know that the university is going to be monitoring that through a portal. The students will, the nurse also told me today that if the student, so say somebody at your agency tests positive and the student is at that facility at that time, then they have to, if they were not in close proximity to the person that tested positive, they don't have to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. The university's not requiring that. Your agency may require that, but MSU won't require that as long as the student was not in the area at that time. So I'm going to pause and see if there anything, Caitlin, around questions.
Yeah, there was
the
a
chat?
question. There was a question about submitting the health screening forms, and I believe, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but you or the university is going to send. Oh, Paris just shared it, but I think we'll send the link out to students before the start of the semester, so they will have it. The students will be the ones who have to fill that out.
Correct. I'm waiting on an answer from, again, from the university physician's office as to whether or not they are required to take the COVID training, which is really for MSU employees or students that are going to be on campus, but they're not thinking about internships and field placements and the impact that may have. So once we get that information, I will share that. We'll send that out as an email, but you have to have an MSU email account to access
I have
that.
like noodles and spaghetti sauce.
Okay. So other safety things, like if students are doing home visits or things like that, we ask them to make sure that they have to follow your policies around that. Okay, we're going to talk about stages of the internship and your role. And I'm just going to go through this kind of quickly. This is some of the heavier stuff where, you know, you could look at it, but students start out with great anticipation. And I can just from a professional development level, anybody who's doing anything brand new, if I all of a sudden got a job in child welfare, I wouldn't know what I'm doing. I would need scripts, I would want structure, I would need to know how to do the job. And so those kind of how-tos, and they really lack confidence. So especially if they're working remotely, and students are super concerned about, am I going to become a competent social worker getting trained during a pandemic? And one of the ways I think that you could really help support them with that is to reassure them that they're getting skills and training and flexibility around a new way to provide services. And they're going to walk out of here. This thing isn't going to end. I mean, that may be a way that there's opportunities now for folks that couldn't, that maybe didn't have access in the past. I mean, we're all having to be very creative in managing these changes. So I think that that's going to be one of the things that they're very anxious about. Any questions in the chat, Caitlin?
Yes, we have a question. Are the BSW students allowed to do field work?
Yeah. Okay, so I just got out of an administrative team meeting before coming on here. The bachelor students, the university said that bachelor students could not do anything in person. Everything had to be online. Right now, our associate director for teaching and instruction, Monica Eaton, is in communication with the provost's office for undergraduate education. And we're trying to find the answer to that. If they're going to allow the bachelor students to do field placement. And that just kind of funny, she said, some of it is just educating them on what this means. They're like, well, you know, field trips are really good for students. And I could see how the School of Social Work would want students to go on field trips. So, you know, she had to educate them that we're not talking about field trips. We're talking about something else. So that's one of the things that we will hope to find out. I don't know. She said that we might know later this afternoon. Or certainly going to be early next week, hopefully at the latest, because that affects everyone, and we don't have capacity to train 56 bachelor students virtually through the school. So thanks for that question.
There was also a question.
Okay, so then there's gonna go.
Sorry, just one more question I think is important to clarify. Someone asked about, I imagine a lot of agencies are also requiring a health screening form for students when they go in person. So students will be filling out both, one for the university and one for the agency, if the agency has one.
Right. Yep. They have to fill it out through MSU. And then they have to fill one out. Whatever the agency requires, they're going to have to do that. You're going to hit a phase of disillusionment where they feel like, and they may come in with that. Again, everybody's kind of all over the place with this. So really, you know, listening to them and gaining their perspective on it, and encouraging them to be kind of open and curious instead of being fearful, like I wonder how this is going to roll out. And there's just so much uncertainty anyway in an internship when people can be in person, let alone now. So unexpected issues arise all the time. Did they get to, did I skip a phase? Oh, confirmation or confrontation. So now there's going to start, you know, kind of, they feel like they have some understanding, and if they have some concerns, then this is when you'll start seeing them talk to you about that. Some students might just start out that way, you know, but again, just hearing their perspective and clarifying their concerns. Another thing that I think is really helpful for students is to sort of kind of lay out, like students will say, I'm not doing anything at my field placement. Well, what are you doing? Well, I'm reading policy procedures. I've observed some sessions. I've attended some meetings, but I'm not doing anything. Well, what would you like to be doing? I want to have my own caseload. that's kind of what that means when they say I'm not doing anything, at least my experience. So if you can help them see the skills and the foundation that they need to have to get where they want to go, I think that that's really, really helpful. Then later on, you know, they're going to develop some competence. Some students will come in with skills already and just building on those strengths with them. And they'll start seeing themselves and have increased confidence in making decisions. So what you can do is help acknowledge that and, you know, recognize them as a emerging professional. And then we're wrapped up and we're done. So assisting them with the transition, what's next. The end of the academic year is always high anxiety because students know that they don't know what they think they need to know. You know, they're only in for 480 hours, and actually those hours are going to be adjusted at the bachelor's level if, but students can do more than that if they want. But the Council on Social Work Education allowed for a reduction in hours. So the number that they'll actually be doing will be less than that over the academic year. But I think there's going to be some high anxiety around like, I'm not ready. So helping them see that the skills that they've learned can be generalized to other opportunities within the profession is a really helpful thing for them. Okay, are there any additional questions?
There are a few questions about our requirements, Julie.
Okay. So at the bachelor's level, they're going to be required to do at least 340 hours. So that's, if my math is right, what is that, 165 a semester? And then some of that time, though, would be accounted for through the integrated field seminar, which would be a total of 30 hours for the year. So, you know, really it's around 310. And, you know, that's not very much time to develop competence. So if students want to do more than that, they can. They certainly can. The master's students are maintaining the requirement of, we're maintaining the requirement of at least 240 hours each semester. And that comes out to 2 days a week, 16 8-hour days, but it certainly can be spread out. We have students who are parenting and homeschooling and are either single or, you know, their partner's working too, and we need to have some flexibility with them around their time and when they'll really be available to do it. So if there are remote activities that students could do, like reading policy and procedure, and then being able to show you that they've done that and ask questions and supervision, that would be absolutely appropriate and appreciated. Okay, that's just crazy. So we're talking about like the integration now of content into the field, into learning, and this is a hierarchy of thinking, and students will start with the foundational knowledge. You know, they're going to want to move up to the application of those skills and knowledge that they have. These words that are in this light bulb are action verbs that you can use to create the learning activities. So a student may apply ethical decision-making model 3 times a semester. So you would know, you're at that application level. You don't need to know this. This is really, it's just might be some helpful verbs for you to use in developing the learning agreement activities. And the fall semester will be more knowledge comprehension application. And then the second semester, hopefully they're able to apply some of these higher levels of thinking. So this is another academic kind of educational slide around the difference, like the areas of knowledge that you could consider for a student. Those are our social work 6 values that students would be addressing throughout the semester that we hope gets integrated into their language and their thinking about their decision-making process. And then those are some of the social work skills that students will be integrating as well. So some reflective questions that you could ask students when they're integrating the content is like, what's the purpose of the work? And what were the knowledge, skills, and values that they used in these situations? And why are they necessary for effective practice? Okay, any other, I see a couple more questions came in the chat. Okay, I'll move on. So it's surprising that students sometimes don't know how to dress properly. Attendance could be an issue sometimes. They are just having a positive attitude. Sometimes students don't identify as a social work as a profession, and in terms of implementing the values, or making good use of their time. Sometimes so one of the things to be really important for you to talk to them about is your social media policy. It's like we're talking about the areas where students just, it's surprising what they would do. They around liking friends, following people, ethical use of social media, putting their phone down, not having their phone when they're in a group session, for example. So just, the students just need to be very clear about uses of around technology as well. So, as a part of self-reflection to understanding how past experiences have impacted their relationships with field, family issues, other commitments, and then just balancing everything right now and taking time for good self-care. So we expect them to demonstrate proper etiquette and behave in ways that are appropriate for your organization, and also being a representative of MSU. We expect them to use their time well and produce quality work. So I think this is an important slide on managing relationships with each other. their teaching versus learning style. An example of this, we had a student and a field instructor that just had very different styles. And the field instructor basically said, well, I'd like you to go out and just, get to know the residents and, come back and let me know what you learned. And for that student, that student was needed a lot more structure. And the field instructor was like learned by kind of like jumping into the situation and then, figuring it out and see what happened. So, and I also realized that the student was a visual learner and the field instructor was a verbal learner. So, that's a really, I think, important, so there's visual, verbal, kinesthetic, people who need to kind of, do things. Those are the people that are walking around when they're doing a presentation, because they got to have that kind of movement. So if you're finding there's a communication issue, this might be a way to kind of narrow it down, and we're happy to help guide that if you need any support from me or the coordinators or from your liaison. Having regular supervision is really important to schedule that and to do your best to not have that be interrupted. That's, responsiveness, attending to the student, especially in the fall semester. This is the heavier time and then you add all the other uncertainties. So I know there needs to be flexibility with that. If you can schedule a regular time and be consistent starting out with that, will help a lot in your relationship with them. So, recommended, provide the student with immediate feedback. Don't wait until like mid-semester or the end to give them the feedback. We need to give them a chance to respond. And if you need some support with that, again, please ask us. I know y'all have had experience with giving feedback, but again, we're talking about the few cases that end up being, really, really concerning. And this is what we find, is that the students haven't gotten the feedback in a timely way. Okay, let's pause here before we get to paperwork, and what other questions are coming through the chat, please?
Sure. Let's see here. Can students begin before September 2nd?
Yep, they can. We have, the issue is the issue of professional liability coverage. MSU covers liability insurance for students while they're in field. So what that means is that we can't require them to be working on a course that hasn't started yet. What we need is we have an extended placement form that the student completes and has you sign and submits to the coordinator, so we know and we've approved. The university will cover the liability insurance as long as there's an approved plan in place that's been approved by the school. I'm not real worried about it at this point, to require that to happen. If there are especially orientations and trainings that you want the student to do, there's not a risk of liability so much. It would be if you ask them to do a home visit and then they did something unethical while they were at that home visit, for example, then there would be a liability issue. I've been with the school almost 25 years, and we have never, ever had in my time or previous to that I'm aware of, a liability suit because the student did something unethical. We've had students get dismissed for violating HIPAA or law or something like that, but there's never been a suit brought against the university for that. Are there other questions?
I have another question asking what training do the MSU students get in self-care?
Yeah, we have a training that we do around, well, like mindfulness, for example. We just did a student orientation this week and talked about the importance of self-care. And is your mind full or are you mindful? You know, mindful like 2 words or mindful 1 word. So we really encourage them to do the things that they need to do to respond to the loads of things that they're dealing with in a healthy way. And mindfulness is an example of what we do around self-care. Other questions?
That is all that I have so far.
Okay. We require a process recording once a semester, and these are things to use to establish their learning needs, their gaps in knowledge. So a process recording, and we have a form on our website for students. I don't know, Paris, do we have one in Sonia?
I would have to take a look. I'm not certain yet.
Okay. Usually when we've had one in our data system, and we're using a system called Sonia now.
Oh, yes, we do. Sorry.
But anyway, it's basically, okay, so that form will be in the students' webpage in the Sonia. So the student would so let's say that they're having to redirect somebody or confront somebody on something. Let's say they have to, somebody's not following the plan and they're providing case management and they need to challenge them around why they're not. That might be something that they would process record, or they could process record a Zoom meeting where they're just looking at and do a socio map or something, or and look at the relationships and how they saw that. So it's kind of it's typically there's a section of it that where there's a verbatim exchange between the student and somebody else, or they're observing this exchange, and then they break down their thoughts, their reflections about this, and then there's any observations, and then there's a place for you to give them feedback, and then they so they can do as many process recordings as you want them to do. Some people love them, other people don't, but we require one a semester.
I can add, it was
Um,
just yesterday that those forms were published in the students' accounts, so they had access beginning yesterday. And if you are one of the field instructors that would like your student to do more than one, like Julie just mentioned, you can ask them to do more. We can add additional blank forms in Sonia for them. So just let Paris know and she can add that form.
Thank you, Lisa. Lisa and Paris and a few other, and Caitlin, Rebecca. I mean, there's some people on the team that are Sonia experts and leaders for us. I am not one, so don't you don't want me giving you advice on that at this point anyway. Okay, the let. The students are responsible for completing this and doing this in a timely way. So this it's a big thing. There's, I don't know, 32 or so activities that have to be identified. And then at the end of the semester, you complete the evaluation form. But you do also help them identify the activities that we asked that need to be SMART. The time-bound piece is really throughout the semester. So you don't have to say by October 5th, they will do this thing. we really want students to, in order to demonstrate competence, they have to do it more than one time. So we ask that the activities use things like 3 to 4 times a semester, continuously, monthly, ongoingly, those kinds of words. So it indicates that the student will be doing this more than one time. Here's a sample of our our LET form. So this is competency 4, as you can see on the top: engage in practice informed research and research informed practice. And then the behavior is what the student will do. So they'll use theory and scientific inquiry and research to guide practice with individuals, families. Then, so the student would identify that they would research. So let's say they have somebody on that they're meeting that has a traumatic brain injury, and what's the evidence shows about how you ought to go about working with somebody with the TBI, for example. And then they could identify 3 or 4 articles or something and then discuss that with you. Not that you all don't have your own approach, because you do, but this would be like an example. And then the level of competence kit. So then they would write in that SMART activity. You just click on the pencil icon and type that in. Then the areas of competence, needs improvement, meet standards, or are outstanding. At the end of the semester, you click one of those bubbles. And then the dimensions is really something that CSWE requires us to identify. Is the student learning a skill? Is this a knowledge? Or is this cognitive affective processes, which is really self-reflection? Then the evaluation part at the bottom of each competency, or underneath each competency, we would ask for you to check this box at the end of each semester. And then to write in additional accomplishments that they may have done. So there might be an activity the student really didn't get to go to because the conference was canceled or whatever the situation was, that you might then identify other ways that they demonstrated meeting that competency. And this is one of those things that supervision agenda, or some way where the student is documenting and emailing you ways that they are attending to the curriculum. That's something that can be really, really helpful. And then specific ways that they could improve, so the student can identify. And you don't have to put in a lot or everything. That's not the point. It's just, for you to acknowledge the different things and additional things that they have done. And this is why I'm giving them an outstanding skill rating, or why I'm giving them a needs improvement, because they're so lacking that they're not, I'm going to give them a 1.5 overall. Any questions about the LET? So this is the signature page that will be at the bottom of it. So again, at the end of the semester, you complete the evaluation, or I talked about pass, no grade. Yeah, I think we've already have covered this. So this is going to be, the next several slides are each competency, and there's additional information underneath each one about what that looks like in practice. So when we say demonstrate ethical and professional behavior, what does that look like? It looks like these things. And students get all of this as well. Same thing for competency 2. So again, we don't have time to go through all of these, but it's a resource for you. So, so you can have that. So, this is the social justice one. Obviously, in our current times, I think this whole thing got highlighted and really elevated as an area of importance for practice. And students are very excited and energized about doing something to address the inequities, disparities, and racial injustices that have come to national and world attention. So I wouldn't be surprised if your students are talking about this and maybe offering some suggestions, or you could certainly ask their input. These things, if there's something that you want your agency to do, the student could easily include that in in their learning agreement. Like I provided field supervision for a student last year, and she was working on ensuring that their agency was using gender neutral pronouns and trauma sensitive and trauma informed. And so like she reviewed the policy and procedures manual and then advocated for policy changes around using gender neutral language. For example, that might be something that a student could do if you were interested in that. So this is the research. So looking at evidence-based practices that are used and evaluating and engaging in those practices. Policy, it can be across any level from agency to federal levels. Then the next ones, so for the generalist group, this is the generalist curriculum we're talking about. So that's bachelor's and students in their first field placement at the master's level. They have to work across these systems of individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities. If you have a clinical student, it's going to say engage with individuals, families, and groups. And if you have a macro student or OCL student, it'll read engage with organizations and communities. Other than that, it's still the competency overall is around engagement. Then assessment is the next one. You know, identifying strengths and needs, gathering data. Then we move to intervention. So, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. And then finally, the evaluation of practice across the systems. Are there questions in chat? Okay, and then here's our awesome team. If you are a Mid-Michigan or Flint field instructor, Corey Dene will be leaving our team at the end of this month on the 31st. And
this is Rebecca. I just wanted to say hi. I apologize. I popped on late. So I just wanted to, since you're talking about Corey retiring, I'm going to be the field coordinator that takes over for the Flint and Mid-Michigan, and I will continue with the Oakland students as well.
Great.
So hi.
Hi. Okay, so that was a lot of content, and I'm back. I think my video or my voice might have got garbly a couple of times. Hopefully it wasn't bad. There were just other kind of like a couple of Lisa asked me to announce something.
Julie, I think you already put out let folks know that if they have a 100% remote option at their agency and they can accommodate hosting an additional student, we do have a need for that. And then separate from that, I don't think the other thing I wanted you to just announce, Julie, just with regard to, we have some new options for students this year, just with regard to their course of study for field. And that would include a summer block option that's new this year for students. This cohort of incoming students they're the first ones eligible for that. Summer block would be that they would do all of their field education over the summer. And another one that we're able to move through the university system very rapidly, which isn't typically the case, but first placement students have the option of postponing their entry to field, where they could have a spring semester start and then they would finish their second semester of field during the full summer semester. So just bumping those 2 consecutive semesters, bumping it forward by a semester. So if that creates additional opportunity for you to host students from our program and you'd like to consider an additional student, please reach out to any one of us because we do still have students to match.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lisa. Are any other questions about or concerns that you have with COVID and for students, or any questions about our program's requirements? Okay. I guess one other thing I just would add is that we don't want students to finish early. They're expected to, so like, you know, if a bachelor student's doing their 160 or 70 hours in a semester, that they're not finished by Halloween. You know, we want them to be able to have that experience over time. It's also okay for the student to put time in between the semester break. That is, there's a continuity of care policy that we have that requires students to attend to the services and the people they're working with. So if a student, if it's in the best interest of the client, we would expect the student to either make arrangements to be there, or the project, or whatever it may be. That they would be there to provide support during that time. Students also need to have a break, and that's part of their self-care too. So usually they figure it out. Students cannot, let's say somebody has a disruption, like they have to self-quarantine for 2 weeks and they can't be at the field site, for example, and we would ask, hopefully there would be some other things that they could do during that time that would be remote. And so it would be great for those of you who have students that are going to be physically present to do to have some remote activities as an option for them, as we talked before. But the student can't, sometimes field instructor will say, well, we'll figure that out, or you can make that up next semester. Well, that's not possible. That's a call for our office to make. So anything that is a deviation from the norm of how things you've set up, if that arises, please talk with your field coordinator about that, or with me. Okay, 2 questions.
Yes, I have 2 questions. The first is there an element of community organization / march, etc. in the learning opportunity?
whoever asked that question, could you unmute and talk with us about that?
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering if I know that it's primarily focused on the agency that the individual is working with. So if I have an individual who's working and doing a MSW program, is there a component that we can implement into the learning contract that talks about community marches or organizing involved in, community participation? I know that this coming Saturday, there's a big march across Michigan regarding the Postal Service and advocating for the right to vote, et cetera. So my wonder is, can you implement something of that nature, which I think is really important, as part of the global picture into the learning contract?
Yeah, that would certainly, I think, could fall under social justice and advocacy competency. So you could say that the student will demonstrate ways that they are advocating, and that can happen at, at across systems levels. So yeah, so thank you for that question. And
Then,
Paris, you had one other question?
yes. If students are not allowed on campus after Thanksgiving, how does that affect the internship?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good question. If they're, so some of them may be finished by Thanksgiving. It's really, that's like 2 weeks before the end of the semester. So, or maybe, yeah, I think the evaluation tool is usually due the first Friday in December is when the evaluation will be due. And we'll send you out reminders about that. Don't worry about that right now. So it could be that the student is finished, or it could be that from that time forward, they may be doing some work remotely, either through telehealth or Zoom sessions or other kinds of research that you might want them to do, like finding out how other programs provide a particular service, something that they wouldn't have to do while they're in person. They could develop some surveys. They could, there could, lots of things. We also have, I don't know if we have this on our website or not, but we do have suggested remote activities for students to consider when they're not in field.
You may
Okay,
have mentioned
anything
this.
else?
Sorry. You may have mentioned this, Julie, but I think going along with that virtual planning, but I'm encouraging students to do contingency planning with their field instructors at the beginning of the semester. So in case there is a shutdown or someone needs to self-quarantine, come up with a plan B for things that they can do from home, if that's a possibility within the agency. So that's not a freak out moment for the student if that does happen.
Yep, everybody in the nation is dealing with this. Lisa, I see you just unmuted. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You're okay. I was just going to make,
No,
go ahead.
I just want you to, I guess, for you all to know too, that we're working with other schools of social work in Michigan. We're working with, I sit on a national board of field directors and educators, and we're schools across the nation are dealing with trying to figure this out, and all of the things that we're how are we going to respond. Different parts of the country are affected, in different ways, with it being a hot spot or high spiking. So I just want you to know that the things that we're doing are informed by our colleagues in other schools of social work in the state and across the nation. So we're really working to provide the best opportunity and get the best information that we can have, because this has never, ever been done before in the history of social work education. So we're all figuring it out together, and we appreciate your support with this and willingness to educate people during this very difficult time. So I'm very, we're very grateful. Our profession depends on you very heavily. And so I wish you a really good year. Lise, go ahead.
No, I was going to just make a comment about Sonia, so completely unrelated to the topic that you were just talking about. Just with regard to Sonia, it is a new platform for us this year. For those of you who may have been field instructors over the summer with advanced standing students who are joining us today, I really appreciate all of the patience that you had as we worked out a few kinks. My hope is that all of those kinks have been worked out as it relates to the LEP form and the process recording and whatnot. But certainly if you run into any barriers, please reach out to Paris, or you can also reach out to me. We will also be adding some features to Sonia. There are some things that you're going to find in there that are not required for you and your student to do. So for example, there's a way to do record keeping related to time in Sonia. Use those features if you'd like to, but just know that they are not requirements at this point, and they might not ever be. So use it to your full extent that you would like to, but that's a question that might come up, like, do we have to use this record keeping?
Any other questions or comments? I guess I wanted to just make sure I said this well. The students' field education, their seminars, whether they're a master's or bachelor's students, those hours that they spend in the seminars do count toward the required total for each semester. So for master's students, it is 10 hours in the fall, and then another 10 in the spring. And for bachelor's students, it will be, about 15 hours. They're in a 50-minute class. So, yep, Paris will stop recording this when we're finished, and we'll send the link out to field instructors, everybody who's listed as a field instructor for us. Okay, thank you, everyone.